Hi everyone, I'm Zach Reinhardt, and we're going through my top 20 Japanese albums of 2016 today. Top 20 just because I listened to so much fucking music this year that I'd be leaving out a ton of great albums if I only did a top 10. My last video, the top 10 Japanese EPs, was like 20 minutes, which is way longer than my normal reviews. So I'm not sure if this is gonna be split into two videos or something, but either way, I'm gonna try and blast through it pretty quickly. So I'm not gonna be going into a huge amount of detail. So if you want to know more, there are links in the description to listen to at least a song off of any of these albums. I think I have links for all of them. And if you just want to hear me ramble about the albums, I might have a review up, and I'm always in the comments. But without further ado, number 20 is Suiyobi no Campanella, or Wednesday Campanella, whichever you prefer, with UMA. Wednesday Campanella, as I'm going to be calling them, is a three-piece kind of off-kilter pop and EDM group with a little bit of hip-hop involved. Not so much instrumentally, but they do use rap quite a bit in their songs. They have a female vocalist, and I believe there are two other members that do the production. And a lot of people have been complaining that they've gotten too pop as they've gotten bigger. I really kind of disagree. Well, I definitely think that they're in a like cleaner, more poppy direction. This thing is still kind of weird and out there at times, and especially with some of their like newer songs that are going to be coming out on their forthcoming album. But this album is a pretty solid collection of kind of off-kilter EDM with some weird vocal stuff going on. And you know, if you're into that kind of scene of female Japanese rappers, she's not one of those like quiet, high-pitched whisper rappers like Daoko was, but she's definitely kind of along those lines and is an interesting vocalist. She really is not afraid to get a little weird with her vocals and howl. And the instrumentals are some pretty colorful, well-produced EDM with some kind of like interesting drops that aren't your typical just, like big bass drop or something. They've got some interesting like melody stuff that they do, and they kind of switch around, and they really like to play with your expectations a little bit. If you're into EDM and kind of dance stuff and pop, this is definitely a very colorful, interesting record. Number 19 is Fam Fam by Never Young Beach. This record is all about the guitars. It's a pop record. It's like an indie pop record with a really tropical kind of mellow feel to it. It's probably the most summery of all of the kind of summery indie pop albums that came out this summer. And like I said, it's all about the guitars. They have three guitarists, and it just leaves so much going on in the songs that it's just a bunch of fun to listen to and kind of bounce between the guitars. They usually have two melodies going on at any one given time, just with the guitars, not including like vocals and such. And it's a pretty just well-produced, well-packaged set of songs. The only real complaint on here is that the last song is just way less interesting and just more generic indie pop than the rest of the songs on here. But if you can get past that last track, there's a lot of really enjoyable, fun, kind of summery indie pop tracks with some interesting guitar stuff going on. Number 18 is Kumagusu with their new album Natsuban. This album is like Tokyo indie meets like psychedelic rock. There are some really kind of roaring like walls of guitar on here, but all in a kind of quaint, easy to listen to indie package. The songs are pretty reasonably length. They're not these big, long psychedelic jams, though they do have a few long tracks. And there's just some really solid performances on here. Some great guitar solos, tons of just shifting textures, all on top of a pile of, well written indie rock tracks. It strikes a really nice mix between experimental and really accessible. It's very easy to listen to and easy to get into, but there's definitely also a lot of kind of experimentation and weird stuff to keep you interested from front to back. It's a pretty solid album. Number 17 is the new Homecomings album, Sale of Broken Dreams. Homecomings are one of the better outfits out there doing this kind of purist indie pop, guitar pop stuff. And while this album isn't really doing anything new or progressive with the genre, it's a very solid collection of songs. And there's some really just great choruses on here and catchy tracks and stuff you can kind of fall asleep to, stuff you can dance to. It really spans the kind of emotional gamut. And it's just a really sharply produced, well-written indie pop album. And Homecomings is continually proving that they're one of the best indie pop bands out there. And they might very well be the best, at least of 2016, if it weren't for number 16, Lady Flash, with Koizuru Bill Murray. This is indie pop, I guess, but it's much livelier and just has a lot more energy. Lady Flash is just a little bit more lo-fi, little louder, little more charismatic, and they write some immediate, short, to the point pop music that's, just infectious. The songs are catchy, but they're also filled with a lot of energy, and they're very kind of in your face at times even. These songs fly by at lightning speed. They're all really short. This is a short album, but it's really well done. And, short but sweet, to the point, and thoroughly enjoyable. Number 15 is Bokutachi no Iru Tokoro with Gomi. Bokuiro is a band that I keep wanting to say is generic every time I listen to them. There's this little voice inside of me that says, man, what are you listening to this band for? They're one of a million bluesy garage rock bands that's doing nothing interesting. But there's just something about their music that I find just a little more compelling than all of their contemporaries. And I think it's the vocals. It's probably the vocals. Their vocalist, they have a female vocalist, and she really can command a lot of presence on a song. She has a voice that can just tear your ears away from whatever the hell else you are listening to. And she reminds me a bit of Togawa Jun in that aspect. She doesn't really sound like Togawa Jun, but they have a similar ability to kind of play the soft, kind of quiet, typical Japanese voice, whatever that is. But then also switch into the next gear where there's just a ton more power and they just can roar, really roar. These songs do straddle the line of being a little generic and maybe a little overproduced at times, but they never quite cross it. And the vocals really carry the album into something that's really kind of strange, despite how typical some of the songwriting is. The performances make it just a little odd. And it's an album that I picked up when it came out, and I picked up their last album too, and it's just something I could never get out of my head all year. It was just in there. And so here it is. It's on the list. Number 14 is Boris and Merzbow with Gensho. This is a collaboration between Boris and Merzbow. Boris being a really great Japanese metal and sludge and doom and drone metal, as well as like shoegaze, and they've even done like some more poppy stuff. They've been around for forever, putting out all sorts of stuff, but they're mostly known for being a kind of drony, doomy metal band. And Merzbow, who is a Japanoise veteran, he's been around putting out music since the 80s, and he makes some really crazy, like, just mind bending noise. God, like, he has so many albums out and he's spanned so many styles. He's even delved into metal a bit himself. He's just one of the most important figures in, like, noise music, specifically out of Japan, especially now. And this album is a bunch of percussionless versions of already recorded Boris songs paired with like noise from Merzbow. And they sold these, like the Merzbow side and the Boris side, on like separate discs. And so you're supposed to play them at the same time and listen to it that way rather than it all being together. So you're supposed to kind of play with the volume. I loaded up all the digital files into FL Studio and played with pan and volume and all that stuff when I listened to this. And, I had a blast. And the music is a really nice kind of re-envisioning of a lot of already great Boris songs. And the noise complements it pretty well and kind of follows the overall structure of what Boris is doing fairly well, with the exception of like one of the sides. I think it was like side C, that I have it on vinyl, which is why I'm referring to sides. But yeah, side C was like Merzbow was just kind of doing his own thing, and Boris was just kind of doing their own thing, and they weren't really complimenting each other all that well. But overall, if you're into noise, if you're into doom and drone, if you're into shoegaze, if you're into the harsh, brutal future that is awaiting us with the Trump presidency, then, here you go. Number 13 is the new Foodman album, Easy Minzoku. This is an incredibly just strange, eclectic set of electronic stuff. Experimentation, I guess. I did a review of this thing, and my score at the end was just a bunch of symbols out of 10, because I wasn't really sure how to rate this thing. It's so kind of out there and weird. Like, it's clear that it achieves its goals, I think, if we want to judge it by that. But there are some songs that I was a little underwhelmed by on here that I just didn't enjoy all that much. But this is definitely a very unique and interesting record. There's nobody that's doing footwork quite the same way that Foodman is. I mean, there are some who try, but Foodman remains somewhat unique in his aesthetic. This thing is clean. It's somewhat minimalist at times. It uses a lot of samples, and it uses a lot of like strange sound effects and like stuff that sounds like it came from like some beginner Casio keyboard that had like a bunch of just noises on it that you would never use in a song actually, but Foodman uses them. He's just got a really weird, like, odd sound palette, and there's some really kind of mind-bending noises on here and just textures and sound play. Foodman's a one-of-a-kind guy, and this is a one-of-a-kind record. And moving on to number 12, we have MC Pero with MC Pero no Hitori Yasobi. It's a female-fronted hip-hop record, and a damn catchy one at that. Foodman, funnily enough, is on this album as well. He produces one of the tracks on here, and it's probably the tamest I've ever heard Foodman. I guess he has to have a consistent beat for somebody to rap over it. But yeah, this thing's pretty solid. little hip hop record with some pretty electronic but very smooth beats, something along the lines of like Evis beats or tofu beats, that kind of style. MC Pero does hip hop pretty much the whole time and sings on some of the choruses and occasionally gets a little R&B esque. But all these songs are pretty catchy. They're fun. They're easy to listen to. And they're just really smooth, well produced, some really just slick production, and some good charisma coming out of MC Pero on this thing. I just really enjoy this record. It's kind of chilled out. It's pretty mellow, and it's just easy listening. And now, marking the halfway point, we have number 11 with Ogre You Assholes' new album, Handle Ohana Sumaini. This kind of second arc of Ogre You Assholes' career, with them exploring more experimental, jazzier, kind of stranger territories, has proven pretty fruitful. Papercraft was a really great album, and this is a really great album as well. It's one of those albums that's really grown on me since first reviewing it. It's just got some really great kind of chilled out, like slow burners that really build nicely. This album's a little jazzy. It's a little kind of little left field, a little weird at times. It's somewhat electronic, and it's just really smooth. It's chilled out. It's mellow, and it's poppy and immediate as well. It's really accessible, easy to listen to. There's some catchy songs on here. It almost reminds me of some of Fishman's really kind of chilled out, relaxed stuff. While I don't think this is as great as their last album, Papercraft, it's still, an Ogre You Asshole record. An Ogre You Asshole doesn't disappoint much. I feel like I've just said this so much, but it's just a really solid, enjoyable record. It's nothing really too out there, but it is a little experimental, a little left field. And that's halfway through the list. That was number 20 through 11. And we're going to split this into two videos. So I'll leave a little annotation somewhere around here on the screen. I'm not sure where. That will take you to the next video, the number 10 through 1. You don't want to miss it because it's pretty hyped up. I'll see you there. Peace.